Our association with HLF has been a happy one, a long one, and at least from our side, a fulfilling one. We are both in the same business, trying to propagate the habit of reading. We've done it for 30-odd years now, in a slow and sustained manner. They come with a tremendous amount of energy and a burst of it every year in January. Today's readings are going to focus on Kashmir, which is the language of the festival today, this year. We have chosen to read from a variety of aspects of Kashmiri life, trying to keep out as far as possible the boulders and the bayonets and the bullets. There's a lot more to Kashmir than what is happening now, and we hope that what we read today will cover some parts of these. We've tried to talk of Kashmiri history, Kashmiri literature, Kashmiri people, Kashmir's way of life, the geography of Kashmir, the mountains around Kashmir, and also the philosophy of Kashmir. We've chosen to read a few works of Lal Ded, Kashmiri poetess of the 14th century, I think. It's a fantastic set of aphorisms that she puts into verse and shows a synchronization between Kashmiri Shaivism on the one part and the Sufi way of writing poetry on the other. We have quite enjoyed putting together this reading and preparing for it. We hope we'll be able to pass on some part of that enjoyment to you. Will you come on? We start our reading with an excerpt from Our Moon Has Blood Clots by Rahul Pandita. We don't know for certain where my ancestors originally came from. In all probability, they traveled from the plains of Punjab to settle in the Kashmir Valley in the lap of the Himalayas, roughly 3,000 years ago. They took the same route to enter Kashmir as their future generations took many times to escape from there, mostly due to religious persecution. The land where they settled had been a lake. The valley had emerged out of this body of water due to a geological event, probably an earthquake. My ancestors made it home gradually, building a legend around their settlement. They said that the vast lake that Kashmir had been before they settled there was inhabited by a demon called Jalodbhava. He had been granted immortality so long as he remained underwater. Then, one of our gods drained the lake, sending Jalodbhava into hiding over a hill. The land was abundant with nature's bounty, but geographically isolated, perhaps under the spell of nature's magnificence. My ancestors took to the pursuit of knowledge. It is thus that Kashmir became the primeval home of the Brahmins or Brahmans, those who are conscious. We developed our own philosophy, our own way of life. We held that the world is real as opposed to the other Hindu philosophy of the world being Maya or illusion. For us, everything in this world was a manifestation of this consciousness. We rejected the otherness of God. We believed that the world was essentially a creative expression of Shiva or consciousness. Thus, everyone could become Shiva, irrespective of caste, religion, or gender. Kashmir is so beautiful. My grandfather used to say, even the gods are jealous of it. Not only of its beauty, but also of its contribution to art and scholarship. Arthur Anthony MacDonald, the great professor of Sanskrit in Oxford, once remarked, history is the one weak spot of Indian literature. It is in fact non-existent. But the 12th century Kashmiri Pandit scholar Kalhana penned the magnum opus Rajatarangini, or River of Kings, which is counted among the world's most extraordinary historical works.
In the 10th century, the great Kashmiri scholar Abhinavagupta wrote 35 works, including Tantraloka, a treatise on Kashmiri Shaivism, and Abhinava Bharati, a splendid commentary on the Natya Shastra, the seed of Indian performing arts. The 11th century Pandit poet Bilahana had a secret affair with a king's daughter. When it was discovered, he was thrown into prison and ordered to be executed by beheading. Even while facing the prospect of execution, he wrote poetry. It was in the darkness of prison that he wrote his Chaura Panchashika, the collection of 50 verses by a love thief. It was in Kashmir that Buddhist scriptures were written in Sanskrit for the first time. The revered monk Gunavarman, who belonged to a royal family of Kashmir from the 5th century AD, refused the throne when it was offered to him upon the king's death, as he had no interest in worldly matters, wishing only to spread the teachings of the Buddha. Kumarajiva, a Buddhist monk, whose father was a Kashmiri Pandit, translated the Buddhist Lotus Sutra into Chinese in 406 AD. In the early 11th century, a female Pandit scholar called Lakshmi traveled to Tibet and taught Anuttara Yoga Tantra. It was in the 5th century in Tibet that a Pandit scholar was given the honorary title of Bhatta, one who is learned. The name stuck. For the outside world, we were Kashmiri Brahmins or Pandits. But in Kashmir, we remained Bhattas, a derivative of Bhatta. But somehow, the gods couldn't make peace with us. So they would wreak upon us disease, earthquakes, floods, famines, and fires. And then they gave us rulers susceptible to greed, lust, and deceit, and savagery. 1400 years ago, a ruler called Mihirakula is believed to have been traveling with his army through the Pir Panjal mountain pass when an elephant slipped and fell into a ravine. The cruel king loved the cries of the falling elephant so much that he ordered 100 elephants to be forced down the mountain.
The two golden phases in Kashmir's history were the reigns of Lalitaditya and Avantivarman. Lalitaditya ruled Kashmir for about 4 decades in the early 8th century AD. He was considered a great administrator, and among his achievements, the building of the Sun Temple at Martand in South Kashmir is considered the greatest. It stands even today, in spite of being ravaged by invaders, and is considered one of the most important archaeological sites in India. Of that temple, the British explorer Sir Francis Younghusband wrote, "The temple is built on the most sublime site occupied by any building in the world, finer far than the site of Parthenon, or of the Taj, or of St. Peter's. It is second only to the Egyptians in massiveness and strength, and to the Greeks in elegance and grace." Avantivarman ruled Kashmir for about 3 decades from 855 AD onwards. He built magnificent temples and Buddhist monasteries and offered patronage to learned scholars. From the 14th century onwards, Islam made inroads into Kashmir. Initially, it fused with local practices and evolved into a way of life rather than a strict monotheistic religion. There is nothing that reflects this melding better than a Vakh by Lal Ded, Kashmir's revered poetess saint. God pervades every particle, every being. Don't distinguish between a Hindu and a Muslim. This piece was drawn from the book Our Moon Has Blood Clots by Rahul Pandita. I'd like to recognize the presence of Rahul in the audience. Thank you for being with us.
At the museum by Agha Shahid Ali, a well-known Kashmiri poet. But in 2500 BC Harappa, who cast in bronze a servant girl? No one keeps records of soldiers and slaves. The sculptor knew this, polishing the ache of her fingers, stiff from washing the walls and scrubbing the floors, from stirring the meat and the crushed asafoetida in the bitter gourd. But I'm grateful she smiled at the sculptor as she smiles at me in bronze. A child who had to play woman to her lord when the warm June rains came to Harappa.
When we read the excerpt from Rahul Pandita's book, you heard a mention of Bilhana and Chaurapanchashika. This is a series of 50 poems that this poet, who fell in love with a princess and who got caught by the princess's father and was ordered to be executed, wrote while he was in prison and while he was going to the gallows. A small smattering of those poems is what we are trying to bring to you now. Adhyapi tat kanakar karenu ghanoru deshe nyastam smarami nakhakshatalakshmatasya akrushta hema ruchirambura muthitaya lajjavashat karaghrutam jatato vrajantya. I still remember that mark of deep nail prints on her thigh, anointed with gold dust and sandal paste. I saw the mark as she got up, and I snatched her shining garment. She shyly covered the mark with her hand as she walked away. Adhyapitam virahavahni piditangim tanvim kuranga nayanam surataika patrim nana vichitra kutamandana mavahantim tam rajahamsa gamanam sudatim smarami. Even now I remember her, of a slender build, with her limbs afflicted by fire of separation, and as one having eyes like those of a deer, and as the sole resort of love sports, with her ornaments of many kinds, her beautiful face, and with the graceful movements of a swan. Adhyapi vismayakari tridashan vihaya buddhir balachalite me kimaham karomi janannapi prati muhurta mahinta kale kanteti vallabhatareti sammameti dhira. And even now, knowing that death is drawing nearer every moment, my steady thoughts leaves the gods, and the surprising force turns towards her, my beautiful and dearest beloved. What can I do? Once the king heard all these 50 poems, he pardoned Bilhana, and so it had a happy ending.
From Kashmir as it was, by Sir Francis' young husband. Simplicity of travel was then at least possible 20 years ago. And I managed after crossing the pass, to get along with only one servant who cooked, performed every function of the numerous servants we employ in India, and carried a load himself in emergency. But he was the most faithful of my favorite of all the servants I have ever had. His name was Shukar Ali, and I must ask my readers' indulgence for a digression to describe him. I picked him up in Yarkand in Chinese Turkestan, but he was a native of Ladakh. He was the most cheery, happy-go-lucky, easygoing man who ever proved a good servant in spite of his carelessness. Always laughing, always chaffing with the pony men or coolies, always losing something vitally necessary, but always ready to do the hardest and most dangerous piece of work when the crucial moment arrived. He was the only Ladakhi who dared to cross the Mustaq Pass with me. And but for one incident, I would have a most grateful recollection of his services then. That incident I have often since reminded him of. After crossing the pass, we had to cross a very full and rapid stream flowing straight out of a glacier. Immense blocks of ice were breaking off from the glacier and floating down the stream. The bottom was also partly ice and partly boulder. Shukar Ali, with his usual readiness, volunteered to carry me across the stream on his back. But in midstream, he slipped. I was precipitated into the icy water, while Shukar Ali, in his frantic efforts to regain his own footing, unknowingly kept pressing me underwater. We both eventually gained the opposite bank all right, but I had no change of clothes, and every stitch I had on was wringing wet with ice-cold water.
When 2 years later, government sent me to explore all the northern frontiers of Kashmir from Ladakh and the Karakoram Pass to the Pamirs and Hunza, I again sought out Shukar Ali, and yet a third time when I was sent on a political mission to Chinese Turkestan. On each of these occasions, he rendered unfailing service, and once both he and I were nearly drowned in an avalanche. We had been hewing our way up the steep slopes of an ice pass in a snowstorm, when suddenly, out of the snow clouds above us, we heard a roar like thunder approaching nearer and nearer. We could not run. If we would, for we were on an ice slope, we could only await our doom, for we knew it was an avalanche. But with a mighty rush, it crashed past a few spaces in front of us, and we were safe. After 1891, I did not see Shukar Ali for 17 years, for my travels never took me to that frontier again. But I heard of him from Dr. Sven Hedin, who employed him in Tibet, and who told me of the wonderful tales which the imaginative Shukar Ali related of the journeys we had made together. And the last summer, the dear old man suddenly appeared at the residency. He had heard that I was now resident and had walked 240 miles across the mountains to see me, and he presented himself wearing the identical coat I had given him 17 years ago. He kept jumping up and down, first kissing my feet, then touching my coat, then salaming, and all the time ejaculating an unceasing flow of speech, calling me by every affectionate term. Then, from under the numerous folds of his clothing, he produced a wooden bowl, a bag full of sweets, a pair of goat horns for my wife and myself, and a marvelous collection of showy-looking stones which I had picked up in Tibet for my little girl. Poor Shukar Ali left with many tearful farewell expressions, and a few weeks later, I received from him this letter. Sir, I reached very well home with very felt happy and found all my poor family very well and showed the all kindly of your they got very glad. And we all family, thankfully to you to remember us so much, to little people and my all friends got very glad too. They said thank you and hope you would not be angry with this English writing. Please, you pardon for this and could not write myself and could not get an other Munshi write to you because, and found Rasool. He was my old friend and let him write this letter. Please give my salam to Mem Sahib and Baby Sahib. Your obedient servant, Shukar Ali, from poor Rasool, plenty salam, the mark of Shukar Ali.
From Curfewed Night by Basharat Peer. Rashid Nasky, the poet, lived in a single-story house with a cedar tree outside. A boy led me in. The poet huddled under a shawl in a small room. He had deep black eyes shining out of his sculpted, sunken face. "You must be the one coming from Srinagar," he said, pushing a cushion toward me. Offering a guest a cushion to lean against instead of a bare wall is a local gesture of respect. He stretched out his legs and, leaning back on a cushion, puffed at his cigarette with shivering, fragile fingers. "I am an old man living away from the world. What brings you here?" My friend had introduced me as a journalist, and the poet expected an interview about his thoughts on the conflict in Kashmir. He was both surprised and relieved that I had no such questions for him. These are difficult times, and journalists ask a little irritated. "I just wanted to meet you," I said. A boy in his early teens walked in and asked whether he would have lunch. "You are joining me for lunch," the poet commanded. He took a 100-rupee note from his pocket and handed it to the boy. "Get me some lamb and tell your mother to fry it. The guest will eat with me." He told me he is my grandson. He asked me to tell him stories about my travels. I told stories, he commented and smoked. Food arrived. Rice, lamb, and beans. The poet piled my plate with lamb. "I would eat that for 2 days," I protested. "You are a young man and you need to eat," he insisted. After lunch, we talked. "What do you think of the poetry written in Kashmiri after the conflict?" I asked. "A lot has been written. The younger generation talks about the conflict directly. Some fine poems have been written. In English, there is Aga Shahid Ali's work." "Yes, I love his work," I agreed. Professor Nasky was silent again. He was a fine boy. Shahid used to walk like a drunken man. His father is my friend, and I told him once Shahid was not well, but he believed it was just a poet's way. Soon after that, they detected his tumor. His death was a great loss. Kashmir needs poets like him, but who can evade death? The old poet moved himself to a more erect posture. Shahid wrote political poetry, but he did not compromise technique. Most political poetry is like blank verse. The polemics remain and the poetry dies.
I asked about his own poetry. I asked whether there were any translations. Yes, they have been translated into Urdu. Someone from Delhi has translated my poems into English. The translator never even sought my permission. He did not even send me a copy. He had not written much since 1990. I lost half my family in a grenade blast and stopped writing. I dreaded this moment and bowed my head in silence. The poet narrated his story in a calm voice. One afternoon in 1990, when he was teaching at the University of Kashmir, news came that a bomb had exploded near his house. That morning, a militant was loitering beside the poet's house, planning to throw a grenade at a column of soldiers passing by. Afraid of retaliation from the soldiers, the poet's two sons went out to persuade the militant to throw it away from the residential area. He was adamant, so were they. Their mother joined them. Sometime during the argument, which might have seen much swaying of arms and pointing of fingers to make a point in Kashmiri fashion, the militant accidentally pressed the pin that sets off the hand grenade. When the poet reached home, the grenade blast had killed the militant, his sons, and his wife. I was in a coma of sorts for the next 8 years. I did not write a single poem. Every time I picked up my pen, my fingers trembled. He had no courts to turn to for his loss. I complained to Prophet Muhammad. I sent my prayers and plaints to his court. He overcame his loss with his love for the Prophet. I devoted my time to translating a biography. He was alive again. His eyes sparkled as he talked of his work. You will feel the Prophet's breath when you read the book. I have used the stream of consciousness. I remembered one of his lines. I asked the dervish sitting on the pavement, how far is the world from here?
Ghazal from the Country Without a Post Office by Agha Shahid Ali. The only language of laws left in the world is Arabic. These words were said to me in a language, not Arabic. Ancestors, you've left me a plot in the family graveyard. Why must I look in your eyes, O prayers, in Arabic? Majnoon, his clothes ripped, still weeps for Laila. Oh, this is the madness of the desert, his crazy Arabic. Who listens to Ishmael? Even now he cries out, Abraham, throw away your knives, recite a psalm in Arabic. From exile, Mahmoud Darwish writes to the world, you'll all pass between the fleeting words of Arabic. The sky is stunned. It's become a ceiling of stone. I tell you, it must weep. So kneel, pray for rain in Arabic. At an exhibition of miniatures, such delicate calligraphy, Kashmiri paisleys tied into the golden hair of Arabic. The Quran prophesied a fire of men and stones. Well, it's now come true as it was said in the Arabic. When Lorca died, they let the balconies open and saw his qasidas braided on the horizon into knots of Arabic. Memory is no longer confused. It has a homeland. Says Shammas, territorialize each confusion in a graceful Arabic. Where there were homes in Dar Yasin, you'll see dense forests. That village was razed. There's no sign of Arabic. I too, O Amichai, saw the dresses of beautiful women and everything else just like you in death, Hebrew, and Arabic. They asked me to tell them what Shahid means. Listen, it means the beloved in Persian, witness in Arabic.
From Shalimar the Clown by Salman Rushdie. The official name of their village, Pachigam, lacked any apparent meaning, but some of its older inhabitants claimed that it was a latter-day corruption of Panchigam, which is to say, Birdville. In the vexed debate on whether or not birds were transfigured human souls, this etymological rumor proved nothing or everything, depending on your inclination. Before Shalimar the Clown and Bunyi were born, there had been the villages of actors and the villages of the cooks. Then times changed. The Pachigami performers of the traditional entertainment known as Bhand Pather or clown stories were still the undisputed player kings of the valley. But Abdullah the genius, young Abdullah in his prime, was the one who made them learn to be cooks as well. In the valley at times of celebration, people liked a bit of drama to watch, but there was also a demand for those who could prepare the legendary wazwan, the banquet of 36 courses minimum. Thanks to Abdullah, the villagers of Pachigam were the first to provide a rounded service which offered both sustenance for the body and pleasure for the soul. As a result, they didn't have to share the feast day cash emoluments with anyone. There were other villages that specialized in the 36 courses minimum banquet, the most famous of which was Shirmal, just a mile and a half down the road. But as Abdullah pointed out, it was easier to study recipes than to hold an audience in the palm of your hand. He did not institute this radical change in the village's lifestyle unopposed. Firdaus Begum told him it was a damn fool scheme that would ruin the village financially. Look at all the stuff we have to buy. All the copper handis, the grills, the portable tandoor ovens, just for a start. And then there is the cost of learning the food and practicing, she protested. Is there any reason, theoretically speaking, Abdullah had roared ruminatively at Firdaus. One spring day, he had forgotten long ago that it was possible to lower one's voice when speaking. Is there any reason, theoretically speaking, why actors should not be able to fry spices and boil rice into something other than a soggy mush? Firdaus Begum bridled at his tone. Is there any good explanation by the same token, she bawled back at him, why the Saras cranes aren't flying upside down?
Her dissident voice was in the minority, however. And after the policy started showing signs of being a success, the leading cookery village of Shirmal took a leaf out of Pachigam's book and tried to put on comedy dramas to accompany their food. However, their amateurish stage show was a bust. Then one night, war was declared between the rivals. The men of Shirmal staged a raid on Pachigam, aiming to steal their great cauldrons and to break the ovens in which the traveling players had learned to cook the noblest delicacies of the region, the Rogan Josh, the Tabakh Maz, the Gushtaba. But the Pachigam men sent the Shirmalis home crying with broken heads. After the pot war, it was tacitly accepted that Pachigam was at the top of the entertainment tree, and the others got hired only when Pachigam's tellers of clown stories and cookers of banquets were too busy to offer their services. The pot war horrified everyone in Pachigam. They had always thought of their neighbors, the Shirmal villagers, as being more than a little weird, but nobody had imagined that so outrageous a breach of the peace was possible, that Kashmiris would attack other Kashmiris, driven by such crummy motivations as envy, malice, and greed. Firdaus Begum's friend, the ageless Gujjar tribal woman and prophetess Nazre Baddur, sank into an uncharacteristic gloom. Nazri Baddur was the most optimistic of seers. People like to visit her mossy roofed forest hut in spite of its damp smell of fornicating livestock, because she invariably foretold happiness, wealth, long life, and success. After the pot war, her vision darkened. This is the first pebble that starts the avalanche, she said, shaking her toothless head. Then she went into her odorous little hut and retired forever from the art of divination.
Nazare-Badur had taken her name, Evil Eye Begone, from a character out of the old stories, a beautiful princess who was in love with the hero, Prince Hatim Tai, and whose touch could avert curses. And she allowed the more gullible villagers to believe that she was, in fact, none other than that fabled immortal beauty, whom death had been unable to seize because her lucky touch kept getting her out of its clutches. If it makes people happy, she confided in Firdaus, I don't care if they believe I was the Queen of Sheba. To tell the truth, Nazare-Badur didn't look much like the queen of anywhere. With her loose turban, her single golden tooth, she more closely resembled a marooned pirate. When she was young, she said, she had been blessed with flowing waves of auburn hair, gleaming white teeth, and a blue left eye. But nobody could verify these claims because nobody in the neighborhood could remember when Nazare-Badur had been young. Her husband had offended her by dying without managing to leave her with so much as a single son to look after her in her declining years. She considered this the height of bad manners, and it left her with a poor opinion of men in general. If there's a way to propagate the human race without depending on men, Nazare-Badur said to Firdaus, lead me to it, because then women can have everything they want and dispense with everything they don't need. By the time news of artificial insemination had arrived in the valley, however, Nazare-Badur was long past childbearing age and could not have afforded the procedure even if she had been in the first red, white, and blue flush of youth.
From Before I Forget by M.K. Raina, from the chapter Badshah Lear. When Darza Pathar started and King Darza made his first appearance, I was struck by the characterization of Ghulam Muhammad Bhagat. His presence, his use of space, his dignity, and his delivery of speech were amazing. While watching him, I had a sudden flash. I said to myself, King Lear. The next day, I expressed my desire to take up Shakespeare's King Lear as the first major experiment in the Bhand Pathar tradition. Since my Bhand actors could not read or write, I told them the story of King Lear. After listening to the plot, the general comment of the Bhands was that it was nice, but where was the Pathar in it? Their protests were genuine, because Bhand Pathar is about satire, humor, jokes, and puns, and King Lear is a tragedy. The Bhands had never done a tragedy and had never dealt with a written text. This experiment was going against the very grain of Pathar performances. We started reading the Kashmiri translation of King Lear. For 2 days, the Bhands went through the torture of reading and rereading text. Bashir Bhagat suddenly went into fits of laughter. For God's sake, sir, tell me who speaks Kashmiri like this. So let us drop this translation and we will translate ourselves, I said.
I explained that I wanted them to prepare for it as for any other pather. I placed on 3 sides of the auditorium as spectators and asked the actors to rehearse. Now, the actors, conscious of audiences watching from all 3 sides, immediately brought a new energy to their characterizations. We started pooling in elements of pather. The opening of a pather is elaborate and ritualistic, like the Purvaranga of Sanskrit classical drama. With Kashmiri customs, props became metaphors as action in the pather develops. One prop was the kodar, the long whip, the use of which signified oppression. The kodar was only be used by rulers and by the people in power, like the ruler's entourage of knights. Other elements of Banpather were gradually woven into the play from rehearsal to rehearsal. The Band raised a vital objection about the daughters of Lear, an important cultural issue. They argued that no daughter would treat her father the way Lear's daughters treated him. Even if a daughter was poor and begging, she would never behave with her father in an inhuman way. We decided to change the daughters to sons. This major shift added more of the texture of Banpather. Every day some nice sequences would take shape, but we regularly heard of disturbances. We could keep working as our remote villages were not affected, but we could not be sure how the local population would react to the killing of boys.
One day, when the designers were in the shop looking at fabric, suddenly there was firing in the market. All shop owners immediately pulled down their shutters. Our young designers were scared. The shop owner, like any elderly uncle, directed them to the back door of the shop into his house where his entire family lived. The family welcomed them, offering tea and Kashmiri breads. They stayed chatting with the family for hours, growing into family friends. Soon, I received a call from them saying not to worry. We are safe at Uncle's house. The shop owner came on the phone and reassured me. They are like my daughters. They are with my children and my wife. They are safe. And when the situation had calmed down in the evening, they returned relaxed and with most of the fabric they required. Finally, after weeks of rigorous run-throughs, we were ready for our opening performance. One day before, Ghulam Rasool shared his worry. Tomorrow is Friday, and with so many deaths during the last week, we may be misunderstood by the people. There is a possibility of some reaction. Gul Muhammad Bhagat said, we will perform, but first we will all go to the masjid and offer our namaz, and after that, we will come back and perform. Nobody will say anything. The next morning was hectic. We did not announce the performance, but word-of-mouth publicity had already happened. At about noon, all the bhands went for their Friday namaz, while the remaining crew prepared for the performance. An hour later, the actors returned and started getting into their costume. Ghulam Rasool told me, a whisper went around that the drama would be starting soon, and our Maulvi, who was leading the namaz, speeded it up. Now the public from all the masjids are coming to watch the play.
A couple of thousand people came from 3 or 4 masjids towards the performance venue, already occupied by women and children. When all our actors dressed up, we met for our dua, our prayer before the performance, and then they marched towards the venue. They looked royal, carrying their costumes with great pride. They wore brocade turbans, specially designed caps, and more. Our designers had done a remarkable job of fabricating complicated medieval dresses with the village tailors. Self-sufficiency was gradually being realized. Our village blacksmith was now our trained metal property maker. For this play, he had made a strong, impressive-looking metal sword. I asked him where he got the metal from. He laughed and said, "From abandoned coal tar drums." The villagers were gifted and talented men of culture and craft. There is story after story about the sourcing of the materials for our projects. The final performance of Badshah Pathar went off without any hurdles. At every stage and right to the end, the play met with a lively response from the public. In the last scene, when Lear looks at his dead son, Mahmud bursts into a Sufi song. The last lines of the king became very ironic. "You are responsible for his death. You killed my son."
Now, the next piece, ladies and gentlemen, is about the same play, which was performed at a later date for a more sophisticated urban audience, titled The Dara Shikoh Show at Almond Villa. An audience of about 300 filled the back lawns of Almond Villa on the evening we performed our new production, Badshah Pathar. This rested at the foot of Shankaracharya Hill facing Dal Lake, perhaps the most beautiful sight in all of Srinagar. The cream of the city began to arrive, asking if I really believed that village performers could do Shakespeare's Lear, and what an ambitious idea it was. What will these rural actors do with the great speeches of Lear? One woman condescendingly asked. These kinds of comments continued. I couldn't snuff at this snobbery, and I said, Shakespeare was a bhand, like our bhands, and not a professor of English. He wrote his plays for his company of actors and not for classroom studies. We are doing a Kashmiri Shakespeare. Badshah Pathar is our contribution to the centuries-old Shakespearean tradition. I ran backstage to meet all my actors before they went on stage. I said to them, let us get together for dua. You know, the turban of the Bans has been taken away long back. You are performing for your turban, your honor and your dignity. You have suffered humiliation for years. Today they will know what talent you're made of and what they have missed for decades. All Bhans uttered Ameen and had tears down their cheeks. I hugged each one of them, took blessings from Ali Muhammad Bhagat, and went to the lighting booth to control the lights.
While my teammates watched the performance, I watched the audience. Mahmud, who played Lear, was at his best. When the scene of storm and thunder came, I saw many in the audience wiping tears. As the performance progressed, Mahmud's and the other actors' intensity when the third son's dead body was seen, and Mahmud's rendering of the Sufi song Chunun Push brought tears across the audience. Suddenly I realized that Mahmud was improvising the lines in the last sequence. He brought in the language of the common man's lament and of Kashmiris crying while burying their lost sons. He literally joined these two together in that wail, the pain of the people and the pathos of the play. It was a moving moment. When the theatrical experience strikes at the common man's suffering in real life, theater serves as a place of healing. That was exactly what Mahmud as Lear triggered and brought to the audience with the support of all the other wonderful actors. When the play was over, there was not only overwhelming applause, but people also came and hugged the actors. I saw off all my actors who had to rush back to Akingam, and in the morning, my team and I left for Delhi. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we intended to conclude our performance this evening with a few poems from the magical Kashmiri poet and saint Lal Ded. We were really hoping to have someone read to you in Kashmiri while we read out the English translations. Unfortunately, that hasn't worked out, but we have the next best thing. With us on stage is Siddharth Gigu, filmmaker and writer, whose father, Arvind Gigu, has recently published a new set of interpretations of the poems of Lal Ded. We've asked him to speak to you just for a few minutes about Lal Ded, and if we still have, if Uma will allow us, if we still have the time, we will read out some translations of Lal Ded's poems in English.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. My name is Siddharth. I was born and brought up in Kashmir, and in 1989-90, when the militancy erupted in Kashmir, we had to leave everything and we settled in Udhampur. But all of you have transported me back to Udhampur days today. And you have also, as if magically, made a prophecy come true. Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? So an old prophecy has come true. So the years from 1991 until 1999, almost every other day, next to a camp for the displaced Kashmiri Pandits. Now this camp was an abandoned football ground when the government in 1991 set up tents, close to 1,200. Now if you go to that place right now, those camps are not there, but there is a small Kashmiri Pandit settlement. So those people who lived there have now constructed small houses. It's taken them many, many years. So during those years, almost every day, because there was nothing else to do, and I was a 15, 16, 17-year-old teenager, so I would sit in the evenings especially against the gorgeous sunset with a lot of poets who were Kashmiri Pandit poets, displaced from various parts of Kashmir. They would sit in the evening and recite poetry. Now, during their growing up days in Kashmir, that poetry was romantic in nature. Right? There was love poetry, there was nature, there was devotional poetry. But after what happened to them, the themes changed. So it was all about survival, right? How to live, what to do. It was about the condition, which is human condition, which is inexplicable. So these kavya dharas, right? They were called in Kashmiri, like Bathaki or Kav. Almost every evening, there are these bunch of poets. I happen to be one of the youngsters, sit with them, they would recite. Of course, they would also recite Lal Ded, because they turned to Lal Ded, some of her works, for spiritual comfort. In times when living was an ordeal, it was deprivation of unimaginable proportions, right? So day after day, so I would sit and I would wonder, why are we doing this, I was also restless because I was young, right? Then they told me, this is not the first time we are reading this poetry. Just because this happened, they narrated incidents during their growing up days in Kashmir, in this beautiful valley of Kashmir. We all get carried away by this beauty of Kashmir, They said we would do these things when we were young, in various colleges and schools, in Srinagar, in villages, in the 70s, in the 80s, right? And our poetry was all about happiness and beauty and love. That we are lucky to be born Kashmiris in this beautiful, beautiful place, Now that's where it started. And then that's not where it started. It goes back in time, century after century, and it starts with Laldat, who in 14th century, this young girl, surviving a very, very bitter marriage because she was forced into marrying a family which did not treat her well, and then she has nothing else except poetry. She takes off her clothes and she roams naked, but it's not that nakedness, it's a different nakedness, and she sings in 14th century. And then while you were reciting works from by Kashmiri poets, I was transported to those years in 1990, right? Little did I know that years later, in 2026, I would be carrying forward that tradition. But that's what the prophecy was of these people, including my father, because I would doubt, what are we doing? I never went to Delhi. Like many of my contemporaries, I stayed there. So they said, one of the poets, his name is Arjan Dev Majboor, he said, one day when we are gone, you'll be somewhere in Delhi or Bangalore, and a lot of people will be reciting, reading our poetry, It might take 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50, right? So I got transported. I'm still transported. That's why I thought, while I was listening to those works, from Rahul's works, Rahul comes from the same hell, and from Agha Shahid Ali, who happened to be a family friend, we all talked of just living and dying in Kashmir, which is kind of impossible, right? And that's the home lull that keeps on talking about, Everybody keeps on talking the same thing, right? When you're not able to go back home where you have, spent your childhood years. So thank you so much for, I want to dedicate this day and this last 4 minutes of what I have said to the memory of my father and to the memory of Arjan Dev Majboor, who wrote this beautiful poem. So I will just read out a few. He passed away during exile, and his only wish, like our only wish, I hope this wish comes true. It didn't come true for my grandfather, for my grandmother, whom I lost, for my father. I hope that I am at least, So to the swan, because there is nobody to address this prayer to. He said in 1990, he said, I'm addressing now the swan. And the swan is flying from Kashmir, taking a pit stop in Udhampur camp. On its way, migratory bird, that's what people refer to us, migrants. But we did not migrate of our own accord, right? So just a few. I hope it's in Kashmiri. It's an epic poem, one of the greatest, My father translated, and he said there will be a day, perhaps 20, 30 years, somebody will invite you and you read this. So I'm very happy. Thank you so much. I opened my heart to the swan, sat him on the chariot of my liquid memories, made him recollect the heavenly green spot. I wove a wreath of past events, held a mirror of time, showed him the scarred hush of my being. His thoughts sped past, and in ecstasy, he ruffled up his wings. I said, yours is infinite freedom, glide in the sky, and inspect the world that was mine once. Yours is infinite sky, glide in the sky, and inspect the world that was mine once. Fly over the mountain peaks and find out the source of light, but be careful when you see the blinding fog. Choose carefully. Separate the true from the untrue. View all and come back with the truth. I will deck the sanctuary for you and hug you at the diamond-studded gate. You will see infinite blossoms and green patches. You will feel icy winds wash up shy bushes at sundown. The angels in white descend and whisper the honeyed truth. Give me an image of the scene. Give me some sweet water. This sweet water, by the way, is the sweet water of Kashmir. Just explaining, although need to explain. Somewhere the water is ready for a tango in the past. Kings and courtiers and travelers drank there. Kings and courtiers and travelers drank there. Saints counted beads on rosaries, and hermits meditated, a place for all to go into a trance, implore all to restore peace in the valley, to cure all aching wounds, and to end grief. I'm skipping certain things. From afar, they will say, "Look, that's a tiny bird on the wing, or a morning lotus in the lake." You will hear meaning in the tune of the lute. The goal is distant, but you will reach the blossoms. Plead with the cliffs for the time when splendor glistened, when glory ruled, when wisdom flourished, when strength held fast. Time and eagle flies catch it. The mountains shine, and the silver glitters. The saints' prayers echo from every corner and arouse the thinking the water will last the long winter. Clothed in blue, she longs for rest. A stag capers in a deep canyon. The heavenly spot on the river bank is nature's work. Step over the spot. Fetch me a swig of water, for I'm parched. Thank you so much. Thank you. It means a lot.
Thank you so much for that. Do you need to rush?
For all those people Rahul keeps on talking about, some of us keep on talking about, some of us will keep on talking about, whom nobody knew, because they perished in the camps, and there are thousands, right? So it means a lot to us that we are in Hyderabad, and all of you are listening, and all of you hopefully will buy these books or read or discover and to share and to gift. These books made great gifts, by the way, to friends, That's the story, not just of Kashmir, because this is the story of modern India, right? If you just make it the story of Kashmir, we have lost the plot. So this is the story of modern India. It is still happening, right? It is impossible for us to just book a flight and go to Srinagar and come back. Not as tourists, right? Nobody wants to go as tourists. But we want to go as people to claim our land, which was ours. So all these writings, right from Lal Ded, is nothing but that, right? Naga Shahid Ali and, Shimendra and Bhartrahari, they all, Abhinav Gupta, they all trace Aryabhatta was this crucible of learning, wherein everybody used to go to learn. Buddhist conclaves. Everybody except those who started this whole thing. That is the original Kashmiri Pandits, right? They're not there now. So, thank you so much. I have a flight to catch. I will see you hopefully soon next year. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you so much for joining us for your last moment on stage before.
The poet, it also means in colloquial Kashmir pain, and Ded is what they call all grandmothers. So Lal Ded, Vaks from Lal Ded. Shiva or Keshava or the enlightened one or the lotus born, whatever he calls himself. I just wish he'd cure this poor woman of life, be he or he or he or he.
Whoever chants Shiva's name as he walks the swan's way, planting trees with no thought of the fruit, even if the world keeps him busy night and day, he's won the grace of the teacher who's the first among the gods.
I, Lalla, came through the gate of my soul's jasmine garden and found Shiva and Shakti there, locked in love. Drunk with joy, I threw myself into the lake of nectar. Who cares if I'm a dead woman walking?
Shiva's the horse, and Vishnu's at the saddle. Brahma's cheering at the stirrup. Only the yogi, artful in breath and posture, can say, which god shall mount and ride this horse?
He who strikes the unstruck sound, calls space his body and emptiness his home. Who has neither name nor color nor family nor form, who, meditating on himself, is both source and sound, is the God who shall mount and ride this horse.
Don't torture this body with thirst and hunger. Give it a hand when it stumbles and falls. To hell with all your vows and prayers. Just help others through life. There's no truer worship.
This body that you're fussing over, this body that you're dolling up, this body that you're wearing to the party, this body will end in ash.
True mind, look inside this body they call the self's own form. Strip off greed and lust, polish this body as bright as the sun. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. We've thoroughly enjoyed reading to you. I hope we've been able to pass a part of that enjoyment to you. May I introduce our readers to you. Arnab Maturi, Deepika Mahidhara, K.S. Nair, whom we know as Sri Kumar. He it is who has been responsible, along with Sarla there, for getting together all this material and putting it together for us to read. And Ranjan Ranganathan. And B.S. Prakash.
Little Theatre Hyderabad, you really brought Kashmir here and ended with such beautiful poetry. So thank you very much.